how to legally hide money from the government forever and ever and ever.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
I was trying to get that.
I think we got to, I guess we got to leave that in there. All right. I was already excited about this show. Now I'm even more excited about this show because we have told you guys over and over and over again, one of our most favorite things in the world is finding ways to not pay tax legally. And legally. That's right.
Legally.
We say this all the time. Tax evasion is illegal. It will get you arrested. It will have people come and take your stuff. However, tax avoidance is highly encouraged. We have an entire tax system set up to help you avoid taxes. And one of the best mechanisms through which you can do that over the long term is this magical thing called Roth.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, focus on retirement savings. Why does the government give us such tax advantages for retirement savings? It's because they recognize, and this is something we're going to talk about, where did Roth IRAs come from? The government recognized the healthier you are financially, the better it is for society.
Yep.
So they really try to give you a stick and carrot approach of encouraging you to save for your future.
So that's a great question, Brian. Where did Roth come from? Well, in true full-time equivalent Daniel fashion, he put together a little timeline for us. And this is what Daniel found. In 1990, I say Daniel found. You lived through this. Maybe I should just give you credit.
Were you born in 1997,
Yes,
Bo?
I was born in 97. I was doing all kinds of important things then.
Were you potty trained in
I
1997?
was doing important stuff in 97. So this is what we know. Roth IRAs were introduced.
Had you kissed a girl by 1997?
That one probably not. As part of the Taxpayer Relief Act of 1997, named after Senator William Roth.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. Senator Roth, and this thing had a lot of bipartisan support. He really did want to encourage people to save for the future. And Bo's right. I remember when this legislation was passed. In a minute, we're going to have some self-reflection on some things I was proud of and some mistakes I made as well. But it's right. 1997 was an important date. And then look at this. It took a while for this to catch on. I'm proud to say that I made a contribution in the first year.
The very first year is available.
Roth IRA contributions. But you can see even in the year 2000, Roth IRA assets only account for 3% of all assets.
And I got to believe that it's
IRA assets.
It's probably more than that now because I think people have recognized, people have figured out that Roth is going to be powerful. And we'll kind of explain why it's so powerful. And then in 2021, it's really interesting. More Americans now contribute to Roth IRAs than to traditional IRAs.
Yeah,
which is
I
awesome.
think it's a very select group that's even doing traditional IRAs. And we'll get into when that might even come into play for you. So let's kind of talk about why is the Roth so powerful? Why do we get so excited when we talk about this tax-free growth?
And, you know, Brian, I think I want to give you credit. Maybe it was the content team, but when I hear it in my mind, it was Brian Preston coming up with this. You actually call the Roth IRA the apex predator, or the Roth in general, the apex predator of the financial world.
Yeah, when we think about our bucket strategy where you've got your different pots of money, you want to have your Roth IRA, which grow tax-free. You got your tax-deferred accounts, which your employer match, or if you're in a higher income situation, you might be contributing traditional contributions. And then you got your after-tax or your taxable brokerage account. Of those three pots of money, the Roth IRA is definitely top of the food chain.
And you just alluded to why. Because number one reason why it's powerful, and this is the thing that makes Roth, is that when it gets time for retirement, when it gets time for financial independence, and you begin to draw money out of that retirement account, qualified distributions are entirely tax-free. There are no other investment accounts like that because most other investment accounts have some sort of tax drag, whether it be on the income incurred as it's growing or the growth as it's growing in a taxable account, or in a pre-tax account like a 401k or traditional IRA, you put the money in, but when you pull it out, you got to pay tax. Qualified distributions on a Roth IRA are entirely tax-free.
So the big opportunity, if you know you have tax-free growth, is let's grow that money. Let's get that compounding growth. The 88 times over This is what we talk about. We want you to legally maximize sticking it to the man on definitely avoiding taxation, but as well as building your army of dollars.
So let's talk about just how powerful that can be. If we want to look at the power of tax-free growth, let's say that you contribute $6,000. That's the current annual maximum that you can put into a Roth IRA every year from the time that you were 20 all the way until the time you turn 65. So over your working life, you're going to put in about $270,000 into that Roth IRA. And let's assume that in your 20s, you can earn 10%, and in your 30s, 9%, and in your 40s, 8%, and 50s, and your 7%, and then 6% in your 60s. Well, if you can do that, and all you do from an investing standpoint is max out that Roth IRA every single year, by 65, that $270,000 investment will turn into over $2.5 million.
Here's what's amazing about this, Bo. If you think about this, you put in 270. We can see visually, if you're watching this, on YouTube, you can see that's just the white sliver down at the bottom. Yep. But the account value is actually over 2.5 million. That means 89% of the value of the account is not your contributions, not the principal, not the discipline that went into the savings and the investing. It's actually your army of dollars multiplying and growing upon themselves.
And what I think is amazing is that powerful army, that 89% that is earnings, is tax-free forever. That $2.5 million that you have in retirement is actually worth $2.5 million when you start pulling out. It's unbelievable.
That's the biggest thing we're trying to get you excited about, especially if you're a younger viewer of this. Maximize what can happen in the power of your growing money.
The other thing that's really interesting about a Roth IRA, and the one thing that makes it so powerful, is one thing that we don't like to talk about a lot. This is sort of a secret that a lot of people don't recognize about a Roth because it's something you should never utilize. But you do have the ability to access basis, which are your contributions in your Roth IRA before you get to age 59 and a half, before you get to retirement. If you got into a pinch, you can access that money, although you should, if you can avoid it, never, ever do that.
So, guys, that's a great little, essentially break the glass type moment, but Bo just nailed it. Don't do it unless you have to. That does lead to, but I think a lot of people, you're going to hear this, you're hearing about the great benefits, you're hearing about Roth, and you're like, man, I wish I'd have started this a few years ago.
Sure.
And I want you guys to know, you can be successful even if you're making mistakes with your finances. That's what's so great about being good with your money is you don't have to be perfect.
That's right.
I got to tell you, making good financial decisions is more like playing a game of horseshoes than it is playing a game of golf.
That's right.
Because you don't have to ring the hole to actually reach financial independence. You can make mistakes all along the way, and you're still going to do quite well in the long term as long as you keep fundamentals and the basics right.
Yep.
And look, I can tell you this because I've made some knuckleheaded mistakes that I don't mind sharing with you guys.
Yeah, so Brian, you kind of laid out, I'd say a case study, but it's not really a case study. It's sort of an autobiography. And I think you even said, I want to tell folks, don't make this Roth mistake. Don't make this mistake that I, Brian Preston, personally made as I was going through my financial journey.
Now realize, Roth assets have only been really around since 1998. Well, I got married in 1998. Bought my first house in 1998. I started my first business in 2002. So between
lot of
the
life
years,
happening there.
between the years of 1999 all the way to 2003, a lot of life was going on. And I'm a little embarrassed now because I didn't completely maximize my Roth. I made contributions every year, but I did leave just a little bit, 1,000 here, 2,000 there, where it totaled over that 5-year period. I missed out on approximately $10,000 of Roth contributions.
Now, you're probably thinking out there, oh, okay, well, $10,000 doesn't seem that significant. You know, $10,000 in the grand scheme of financial independence is probably not going to amount to that much because it's only $10,000.
Well, here's the problem. I am now officially old enough that I have gone back and looked at how well my Roth assets did. And if you go and calculate, I know what my account's worth now, I know what I've contributed over the years, and if you levelized out contribution to figure out what's a kind of an annualized rate of return, my asset return has been right under 11%. Because it's been some good investment years out there. For this analysis, though, I said don't use the slightly under 11% I have. Let's just use 10% because
Okay.
we talk about it on the show all the time. But I've recognized it's not that I just walked away from 1,000 here or 2,000 there. It's the opportunity cost of what that army of dollars could have become if I'd have let the money fully go, just assuming it did what my other army of dollars did. And here's what we found. That $10,000 today would be worth a little over $65,000.
And what is wild is, okay, so now you're thinking, oh, okay, well, 10,000 didn't seem that big, but 65,000 seems a little bit bigger. But Brian, you're still, as much as I like to give you a hard time, you're still a relatively young guy. You still have a number of years that your army of dollar bills can be working for you. And so we kind of calculated that if you had that $65,000 in that Roth invested today, by the time you get to retirement, by the time you get into your mid-60s, it could be worth over $430,000. So those small mistakes in the late 90s and early 2000s of not maximizing that Roth potentially cut out $430,000 of your retirement portfolio. But here's the part I think that hurts the most, and this is why you call this a mistake that we don't want you to make, is that is $430,000 of tax-free money that you are not going to be able to get back into the tax-free bucket. Because we're going to talk a little bit in a second about some of the limitations with Roth IRAs. One of the things is, if you miss out, it's hard to go back in time and fix that.
Now, look, I'm a glass half full type
Sure.
guy. I'm an optimist. So, yes, it hurts me that I made this mistake. But I want to tell you guys, like I said, you do not have to be perfect with all your decisions to be extremely successful. So even though I made mistakes of saving 1,000 here, 2,000 here and there, because man, that almost turned into a nursery rhyme that I was doing wrong. But I was not saving as well as I should because life happens. I get it. We talk about the messy middle of your 30s.
Oh,
We
yeah.
talk about things are going to happen. I don't want you guys beating yourself up. It's fun to do these math games because we can see how well our assets have grown, but there's still so much opportunity
That's right.
that we want to kind of share the basics so that you can get back on track and still have success. Yes, I left some money on the table. It's okay,
It's gonna
though,
be
because
okay.
we're still going to be successful. So let's kind of do a deeper dive into the basics.
So we're going to talk about the different types of Roth and the different ways that you can get money into Roth assets. And the first one is probably the one that we are all mostly familiar with. It is the Roth IRA. And when we say IRA, that just stands for Individual Retirement Account. It's the thing that when you were young, if you had an older person in your life who was trying to tell you how to start making good financial decisions, they probably started beating you over the head with open a Roth IRA and start putting money in a Roth IRA. This is the account they were talking about.
Yeah, and remember, Roth IRAs have only been around since 1997, 1998. 97 was the legislation. 98 was the first year you could contribute. Before that, there was traditional IRAs. So a lot of you are probably going, well, what's the difference between Roth and traditional?
Yep. So we actually wanted to lay them out in a T-chart. Again, if you're listening out on iTunes, you should check this out. But here's kind of the differences. When it comes to contributions that go into a traditional or pre-tax IRA are not taxed. It's pre-tax money going in. Contributions into a Roth IRA are after tax. It's money that comes to you in your paycheck after tax have been withheld. There is not a present year tax benefit to those contributions.
And by the way, traditional IRAs can come in several different forms. You can have what Bo just described was a contributory traditional IRA. That's where you're putting in, originally it was like $2,000 a year. Now that number is $6,000 a year. You may or may not get a tax deduction as you contribute, depending upon your income, if you have access to a retirement plan. There's also a SEP IRA. If you have self-employment income, if you work for a small business, there's a chance that your employer is contributing to a SEP IRA for your benefit. As that company grows, you might have a simple IRA. You don't see these as often as when I kind of set one up for my first company in the mid-2000s. Now we have solo 401ks and other things. But simple IRAs let you have smaller contributions than a 401k, but they kind of work very similar. They're simple employer-provided plans where it lets the employees contribute, but also the employer contributes as well.
Super easy to implement.
And then the last one, and this is after you've had a few years of work and you start changing jobs and other things, your 401k assets at an old employer, you might roll it over into what's called a rollover IRA. That's a good landing place for those qualified assets. Those are all the different places that you can kind of open traditional IRAs.
So once you have the money in the account, the actual behavior is relatively similar while they're growing. Both accounts, a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, grow tax deferred, meaning as income is paid out in the account or as capital appreciation happens in the investments, you don't have to pay taxes as the accounts are growing. Both of them grow tax deferred. But at the end of the growth period is when it gets exciting, because when you pull money out of your traditional IRA, or out of your SEP IRA, or out of your simple IRA, or out of your IRA rollover, you have to pay ordinary income taxes on that money. You got a tax benefit on the front end, but you don't get it on the back end. You actually have to pay the taxes. With a Roth IRA, if you pull the money out and it's a qualified distribution, all of that growth turns out to be entirely tax-free.
And that's the secret sauce.
That's
what gets people excited, because realize ordinary income taxes are the highest rates you pay. It's not the tax favored stuff like capital gains are or dividends. You're paying at the marginal rates, just like if it was employment income.
And a lot of folks are asking the question, okay, what does it mean to be a qualified distribution? There are really two things that you have to do. You have to be over the age of 59 and a half, and you have to make sure that the account was established for at least the 5 years. Now, there is one caveat. We already mentioned this. Roth IRA does have an extra benefit that the traditional IRA doesn't, in that you can always get to your contributions penalty-free and tax-free, but you never ever want to do that for the exact reason we showed that Brian felt like he made a mistake. He didn't max out. If you pull those contributions out, it's not like you can go back in time and put them back. So you want to make sure you don't access that unless you have to.
So the tax-free growth gets everybody so excited. What are the downsides? There has to be some downsides to these Roth assets, because it can't be rainbows and unicorns all the time. So what are the limitations or constraints of these things?
Yeah, so there are some unique constraints that exist specifically in Roth IRAs. The first is that there is no current year tax benefit. So if you're trying to contribute to a Roth as a means to decrease your tax bill this year, it won't work. It won't happen. The other thing is that the IRS is pretty specific that only certain types of folks should be able to contribute to a Roth IRA, so there are income limits. The first thing is you have to have earned income, and you have to earn some sort of income. You can't be retired, or you can't fund it for a child who's not filing an income tax return. You have to have earned income, but once you do have that earned income, it can't be over a certain level. In 2021, the limits for where the phase out of Roth IRA contributions begin, for single folks, it's $125,000, and then for married filing jointly folks, it starts at $198,000. So if you are at that level or above, you're going to be limited in what you're able to put into a Roth IRA.
By the way, I think it's worth noting, when Bo says earned income, we're talking about basically wages, self-employment income. It's not money that you made through your investments. It's actually money that you had to go earn, exactly like the name implies.
That's right.
So it is basically wages, self-employment income, things like that. Anything that's going to be subject to Social Security and Medicare tax. By the way, here's another restriction. This thing is so good, they limit how much you can contribute each year. And that's
exactly
something
right.
you need to pay attention to. So with a Roth IRA, that number is $6,000 per year in 2021. Now, it is indexed for inflation, and I'm getting close. This is about the only thing I can look forward to when I do cross over into my 50s, is I will get an additional $1,000 a year annual catch-up contribution.
Now, some people ask me this question, okay, hey, I didn't fund my Roth last year, the year before. Do I get to go back and make it up? Like if I didn't do it in 2019 or 2020 or 2018, can I catch up for that? No, you cannot. So one of the reasons why we tell you is get on the Roth train as early as you can, is because you are limited over your working career how many dollars you can get into that Roth bucket. So you want to take advantage of it as early as you can.
Now, the good news is you have until April to fund even a contribution for a prior year. So if you're watching this, because we are recording this show in February, we can go back in time to a degree and fund a Roth IRA for last year. So take advantage of those things, because that is an opportunity. So here's the next question. We've got you excited. Now you're saying, well, who should go for the Roth IRA? I mean, who is this thing really focused on? And we put together some thought patterns for you.
There's a few traits that if you are a younger individual, why does youth matter? Because you have a lot of time for those Roth assets to compound tax-free. So if you're young, Roth might be a good option. If you have earned income, Roth might be a good option. And if you're under the income threshold, Roth might be a good option. So if you fit these three categories, there's a really good chance that you should consider contributing to a Roth IRA directly.
Pretty much anybody that's under that income threshold. Yep. I mean, look, I know we have Are You Young on there, but guys, the older I get, the younger everybody else seems. I mean, it really is a thing where I think as long as you're under that basic income threshold, funding a Roth IRA is a good thing for your future because there's even some estate benefits or legacy benefits long term. So definitely take advantage of the Roth IRA. It's a powerful tool in your financial independence.
Okay, so if I want to open up a Roth IRA and I want to start investing, are there different types of investments that I should house inside of my Roth? Are there things that make more sense to hold in a Roth as opposed to not holding a Roth?
Well, I'm always going to give the basics first before we start getting cute with this thing, is because I think every dollar has so much potential. I want you to be a good field general who's disciplined, who knows what to do with your money, so not a dollar is wasted, especially in your Roth accounts. So here's what I'd recommend. Don't outsmart yourself. Figure out how much you can save and when you need it, and then use that knowledge to go invest in an indexed target retirement fund.
Love it.
Because that's going to really, it's going to take a lot of the decision making out of it. It's going to let you focus on the behavior of saving. And guess what? If you're in your 20s and you're choosing an indexed target retirement fund that's 40 years in the future, it's going to be aggressive.
Yep.
But as you get closer to retirement, it's going to get more conservative. So it takes a lot of that guesswork out. I do think the mistake I see, and Laura, look, we've talked about it. It seems like 2020 and 2021, and maybe it's because we're all locked up from the pandemic, it has been the year of speculation.
Oh, man, no kidding.
I mean, when we're talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about the growth of Tesla, everybody daydreams that, man, this is the way I want to do it, is I'm going to go speculate, maybe even go buy your GameStop or your AMC and your Roth IRA. There's a big caveat to doing that, and that is the fact that contributions and then investments in your Roth accounts, if you lose money, now look, the gain is tax-free. Those losses don't offer you any tax benefit.
None.
You just absorb those losses. So you should be aware. I always like to remember the whole analogy that this is like playing horseshoes versus trying to hit a hole in one on golf. That's what I would focus on, is that how can I maximize the growth? And the way to do that is focus on that index target retirement fund, and it's going to really take a lot of those mistakes away from you.
Don't make it harder than it has to be. All right, so the second way that we might see Roth is maybe you're listening to the show and you remember that you recently went through open enrollment for your retirement account. And you remember when it was time to select how you want to contribute to your 401k, there were two options. You had the regular pre-tax option in your 401k, but then you saw this Roth 401k option, and it is exactly what it sounds like. You can make the election that when you put money into your 401k, you can choose for it to go into the Roth tax-free bucket as opposed to the pre-tax traditional bucket.
So this is pretty cool because, look, and this is improving every year. We have found from our research 70% of employers' 401k plans, their employer retirement plans, do offer Roth contributions.
Yep.
So that's the glass half full. It is sad that there's still 30%. I've seen it sometimes in our comments section on YouTube. There are a few of you that 30% do not have access to Roth contributions. I would really encourage you, use that data that it's a 70-30 game now to go lobby your HR, lobby your boss. Hey, why don't we modernize the retirement plan so we can take advantage of some of these cool things? It's just a matter of amending the plan document and making this available to the employees.
What I think is remarkable is we help a number of 401k plan sponsors design and manage 401k plans for their employees. It doesn't actually cost any additional money to make the Roth option available. It literally is just checking a box. So don't think just because you don't have it, you cannot incite that change. It's something you should definitely try to influence if you have the ability to.
So now we're probably, because look, this is where it gets a little more detailed, a little nuanced.
Sure.
In the fact that we've got Roth IRAs. Now you're telling me we can have Roth employer plans like a Roth 401k, a Roth 403b. What's the difference? Give me a layout here.
So there's a few, both of them are tax-free. That's the big thing. You don't get a current year tax benefit when you put it in, but the money grows, and if it's qualified when you pull it out, it's tax-free. But there are some differences you should be aware of, because if you're following the financial order of operations, you have a question. Okay, do I do a Roth IRA or do I do a Roth 401k? Well, you want to know these differences. The first is, one of the beautiful things about Roth IRAs is there are no required minimum distributions when you get to age 72. That's different than a traditional IRA or an IRA rollover. However, if you are in the Roth 401k, because it is still inside of that 401k structure, there is a chance that you are going to have to pull out required minimum distributions starting at age 72. So if you are someone who's 70, 71, approaching that age, and you still have money sitting in an old 401k and it's in the Roth bucket, you may want to consider getting that into a Roth IRA so that you can avoid those RMDs.
The other big benefit is, and you guys have probably caught on to this, you don't have as much control on the investment options.
Right.
Now, a lot of you guys, if you work for a large company that's working with the Fidelities, the Vanguards of the world, you're pretty happy with your 401k investment choices. But there's a lot of small businesses that don't necessarily have the greatest investment choices in their retirement plans. You're kind of at the mercy of whoever your employer chose to partner with for the employer plan. Whereas if you're setting up the Roth IRA for yourself, you can go choose one of the low cost providers. So you have a lot more control on the IRA side. I'm just hopeful that maybe you're on the good side of the employer plan, but that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that's a little unique about Roth 401ks that make them really, really exciting is we've already mentioned that in order to even be able to put money into a Roth IRA, your income has to fall below a certain threshold to be able to make those direct contributions. With a Roth 401k, there is no income limit. So you could make $1 million a year and still choose to have your salary deferral contributions go into the Roth 401k. So if your plan makes it available, there are no income constraints. It opens it up to everybody, no matter how high your income is.
Now, I do want to make a clarification here. A lot of people, you'll get surprised by this. You'll say, I'm making the decision, my salary deferrals, my personal savings, and my employer plan. I'm going to do Roth. And then you're shocked to find out that when you get your 401k statement, all of your employer contributions are not Roth. They're actually pre-tax. And there's a reason for that. Realize your employer, not only are they trying to be generous, they're also taking a tax deduction when they fund your matching contributions, your profit sharing contributions. The government says if you're going to take a deduction, we're going to make it be tax deferred, not Roth. Because remember, when you fund all these salary deferrals into the Roth account, you don't get a current year tax deduction. So it's perfectly fine. Your administrator, your custodian, they're going to keep up with the different buckets. You don't have to worry about it. I just want to make you aware. Employer money is always going to be pre-tax. You have the choice with your contributions, whether it's going to be pre-tax traditional or tax-free Roth.
So that's a great point that you make there, Brian. And one of the questions we get all the time is, okay, I heard you guys. I hear you loud and clear. I love the idea of having this tax-free Roth money. So does that mean that if I log into my 401k account and I see that I have a Roth 401k option, no matter what, I should put money into the Roth 401k because that's always what's going to make the most sense for me? Or are there times that it makes sense to put money into the pre-tax 401k as opposed to the Roth 401k?
Well, you definitely, I think there's several things you have to think about as you're making this decision. First of all, let's ask yourself, do you think tax rates are going up in the long term? The second thing, do you think even if tax rates are going up, maybe you're in a high income tax situation right now, you're paying a very high marginal tax rate. I'm talking about if you add your income taxes federally plus the state income tax, you're like, holy cow, I pay above 30%.
Above 30, yeah.
You're kind of panicking about that. And you're like, but it's okay. When I retire, I'm pretty sure I won't have all this earned income. I'm going to be in a much lower tax bucket, in a tax bracket in the future. That if you have that feeling, I can understand. And that's what we talk about, 25% and lower on your combined tax rate. Do Roth. It's just a no-brainer. That's a good historical rate. Even if you think income's going to be lower in retirement, that's historically pretty low. 25 to 30%, you're kind of in that gray zone. It all depends upon your outlook, your specific situation. It's the people that are in the higher tax brackets, meaning 30% and greater, and you think that your income will be lower in retirement, or you think you can legally manipulate your tax code in retirement because you're using the bucket strategy, then you might want to do traditional.
Yep.
I mean, as much as we love Roth, you might want to see if there's going to be a Roth conversion opportunity, especially my fire folks. You might have the potential to manipulate the tax code if you're retiring in your 50s. I mean, that's something to take into account.
I love it, Brian, because what you just hit on is, okay, what we basically just covered in talking about the Roth IRA and the Roth 401k is we kind of covered your primary education. Well, now we're going to take you to grad school. We're going to go to some of the advanced Roth techniques and share with you some of the secret strategies of wealthy folks who want to build Roth assets, but perhaps they don't have access to a Roth 401k, or they're in a high tax bracket. It doesn't make sense for them to do the Roth 401k, and they can't put money directly in a Roth IRA. So what's the deal? Are they just out of luck? They just can't build tax-free assets? Not so fast. There are some strategies we want to make sure that you know about.
The first one, we put it on here as this, but it drives me crazy. Anybody who watches the show knows I do not like this title, because when I see the title of Backdoor Roth, it sounds shady.
It sounds sneaky.
It sounds like on something you have to keep on the down low because you don't want the man to find out that you're doing this. And that's just not the way this is structured. This is actually not a backdoor. It's not a sneaky way to get Roth contributions. It's just a way for you to fund Roth contributions through Roth conversions. That's what you're doing. You're turning traditional assets, IRA assets, into Roth assets through annual conversions. Look, I'm older. 2010, they changed the rules. Pre-2010, you couldn't do Roth conversions unless your income was under $100,000.
Yep.
They lifted the top off of that in 2010 and said anybody can do Roth conversions, and that ushered in the era where now you can fund a traditional IRA. You can then convert into a Roth IRA if, and this is an important part, don't get so excited that you miss this step, because I've seen a lot of successful, a lot of analytical people that screw this up, and then we're left holding the bag trying to fix this thing years in the future. You can only do these conversion strategies if you have no other traditional IRA assets. And remember, that list is pretty long. We've got SEP IRAs, we've got simple IRAs, we got your traditional IRAs that you took deductions on, and then of course we have your rollover IRAs if you rolled over any plan. So if you have any assets in any of those accounts and then you try to do this conversion strategy, the government say, no problem, you can do it. The problem is we're going to make you prorate that's it's going to look like a distribution, and there's a whole calculation with basis and everything else that makes this extremely complicated. Bo, how do you fix this?
Yeah, so there actually is a way to fix that. All that you want to make sure you do is, in order to be able to do it tax-free, you have to have no other IRA assets. He's already gone through the litany of assets: traditional, rollover, SEP, simple. If you have those accounts and you have access to a 401k plan, a really good 401k plan that has low-cost investment options, and you're not going to inhibit your overall investment portfolio, you can actually roll those pre-tax assets, that rollover, that traditional, that SEP, that simple, into your 401k, thereby zeroing out your outside IRA assets. So when it's time for you to execute your conversion strategy, you can put $6,000 into a non-deductible, you're not going to get a benefit for it, traditional IRA. You're going to get to the end of the tax year and the government's going to say, okay, how much did you have in IRAs? And you're going to say $6,000. And say, how much of that was after tax? You're going to say $6,000. Well, when you go to convert that, because all of it was after tax, there is no pro rata calculation. 100% of your conversion was completely tax-free. You can only do that, though, if you get all of the pre-tax assets into an account that doesn't count in the calculation, like a 401k or 403b.
So, Bo, you just went through the process. I think we even put together a flow chart on
We did.
this.
We recognize that it's a little complicated.
Yeah.
So there are some steps you just want to make sure that you work through. And so this is kind of our thought on, does a backdoor Roth make sense for me? So step one, are you under the income limit? Are you under the 140 or 198 to be able to contribute to a Roth? If the answer is yes, just don't worry about the back door. Just put it straight into the Roth.
Why get complicated if you can just contribute to the thing?
If the answer is no, Well, then you have to ask yourself, what types of IRA assets do I have? Because Roth IRA assets don't count in the tax calculation, and inherited IRA assets are excluded from the calculation. If those are the only two types of IRAs you have, that's great. If the answer is no, this strategy won't work with you unless you move some stuff around. If you have rollovers, if you have traditionals, if you have SEPs, you can't do this strategy tax-free unless you move it around. If all you have are the Roths and all you have are the inherited IRAs, then you can, just like we said, contribute to a non-deductible traditional IRA, and you can then convert that to Roth completely tax-free.
So if you then ask yourself, well, what should I put in this Roth 401k? Is it different than my Roth IRA that I talked about previously? I don't think so. Nope. I think it's back to how much can you save? When do you need the assets? Keep it simple so you can focus on the good behavior. The indexed target retirement funds. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the trolls. You guys think these target retirement funds are expensive. Not if you're buying the index version. Right. There's a reason I keep putting index in front of it. I was just on Fidelity's website looking at the index Fidelity Freedom Funds. I think their internal expenses are like 0.12%. I mean, it's pretty cheap. Yep. I mean, it's really cheap to get a lot of benefit of that glide path where it gets more conservative. It's go do your own due diligence. We can't recommend this stuff, but I do know there's big providers like Vanguard as well as Fidelity. Good places to go start doing some research.
Now, quick cautionary tale. We just described to you the entire mechanics for doing this type of transaction. And you can go rewind the show and watch it 4, 5, 6 times and really, really, really get it down. And you may do everything correctly. But Brian, would you say, what is the number one error that we most often see on tax returns that we review? And what's the number one letter that we most often get on behalf of clients from the Internal Revenue Service?
Yeah, it's definitely these backdoor or Roth conversion strategies. I have written, by the way, I'm at 100%, meaning that of letters I've written to the IRS, because I've had to do this. Even though clients have CPAs, sometimes the CPAs get all fuddled up on how the 8606s, the 5498s, and proving to the IRS what the strategy is here. They get confused. And then meanwhile, you can understand a client gets very scared because they get this letter from the IRS saying, hey, you owe this money. We don't understand this conversion, or because you get a 1099-R. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, when you do these type of strategies, you get a 1099-R. And I say probably 10 out of 10 1099-Rs I see, it'll say distribution amount, $6,000. Taxable amount, $6,000. And then there'll be a box on it that says taxable amount not determined that is checked. But you'd be surprised at how many times that I've seen accountants as well as self-preparers screw that up because they're not submitting the 8606 and some of the other support documents, and they're not using the 5498s that the custodian sending you to show the transactions. So when it comes time to report and that letter comes from the IRS, it's easy to clear this up if you understand it. But man, it seems like we have had more tax letters as well as us trying to help shepherd corrections through this type of strategy.
This is one of those things that you want to make sure you do it correctly. You don't want to forget about, oh, that was an IRA that I had from 10 years ago and I just forgot it was out there, because that will complicate things and it will cause you to have to go amend tax returns and that sort of thing if you do it incorrectly. This is one of those times that if you are going to begin implementing one of these strategies, it may make sense to reach out to a professional to make sure that you're doing it right, because it's somewhat complicated. All right, so we did our primary education, and congratulations, you just finished grad school. Now we're about to take you to the doctoral program, because this next one is the big boy. This is the one that, when executed correctly, can have huge implications on your long-term financial well-being. And this one, again, I know you don't love the name, but it sounds really, really cool. This is the mega backdoor Roth.
By the way, compliment to your employer. If you go and review your options for your retirement plan and you find out a few things, you find out that you can make after-tax contributions.
Yep.
That is so powerful, guys. I also think it's big kudos to your employer if they either allow in-service distributions, or even an in-service plan conversion.
Yep.
These are powerful things. It means your employer, whoever they're working with, maybe it's your employer or maybe it's just the people giving advice to your employer, they're saying, you know what? We want to load your employees up with a retirement plan that has all the bells and whistles, because this is cutting edge stuff. Because I can tell you, so many of you guys have written us. I'm like, hey, I go and talk to our plan rep and I say mega backdoor Roth. And they're like, what's
that? I've never heard of
that.
that.
What is that? That is something I've never heard of. So if you have, that's why we're going to tell you, I'm telling you all the components you need. You need to, it's just like you can't make a great batch of cookies without flour.
Yep.
And without, beating the butter, and the butter has to be done a certain way. It all doesn't work. So you have to have the right components to do these strategies. So if your employer is offering these key ingredients, it means that they at least have somebody in their ear that's trying to help you maximize these.
All right, so let's back up for a second because we've talked about the components, but let's talk about what it actually is. The Mega Backdoor Roth is the ability, if your 401k plan is structured in such a way, to allow you to put away not just thousands, but tens of thousands of dollars potentially into a Roth IRA every single year. So a lot of you know that when you go into your 401k plan, there are two types of contributions. There are pre-tax contributions and there are Roth contributions. We've already talked about that previously in the show. But for some of you, when you go in there and look, you're going to see a third type of contribution. There's pre-tax, and then there's Roth, and then there's after-tax. And you're thinking, oh, well, after-tax, you just mean Roth, right? And I get that question all the time from clients. Oh, after, you just mean Roth. No, this is something very different. We all know that with 401ks, there is an annual limit that you're allowed to put in there, $19,500 if you're under 50. Well, what a lot of folks don't realize is that you actually can put in more than $19,500. You can go all the way up in 2021 to $58,000 into your 401k, but only $19,500 can be across the pre-tax or the Roth portion. The remainder of that bucket gets filled up either with employer contributions like safe harbor, matching, profit sharing, or your after-tax contributions.
So there's a good number. You're just not filling up the full $58,000 because your employer, even if they're generous, they have a 4% match or something like that, and they're doing a profit sharing of maybe 6% or 4% on top of that. It's still, there's a good chance it doesn't equal $58,000. Right. So if you have an after-tax option in your plan within in-service distributions or in-service, conversions, you can fill up that extra gap and take it all the way to $58,000 or whatever the annual limit, because it does adjust each year. And it can be then immediately converted to Roth assets.
So a lot of folks I get why I have to have the after-tax contribution, because that's what lets me go over the 19.5. I don't fully understand why I need the in-plan conversion. I don't understand why I need the in-plan distribution. Why does that matter? Well, the way that after-tax 401k contributions work is when you put the money in, it goes in after tax. Well, all of the earnings that grow on top of that grow tax-deferred, just like everything else in your 401k. So when you go to pull that out, your contributions will come out tax-free, but all those earnings are going to be taxed to ordinary income. So it's a really good way to build tax-deferred assets. The reason why you either need the in-plan conversion or the in-service distribution is you want to take those after-tax contributions that you've put in there and you want to get them into the Roth bucket, because once you get them in the Roth bucket, all of those earnings inside the plan are going to be completely tax-free. Without the distribution option, you just have a mega 401k. You don't have a mega Roth. You got to get it into the mega Roth bucket in order to get that tax-free benefit.
So we've made these things sound pretty peachy. I mean, it's sounding, I think a lot of you guys, I probably heard the door slam because you're going to check out, to go talk to your HR department about this thing. Are there some downsides? Because there are a few things, a few cautionary things we need to warn people about.
Yeah, one thing you want to be careful of. The first is you could squeeze out your employer money. So there's only one thing, in our opinion, that's better than your money being tax-free. And that's free money from your employer. Yeah. You want to make sure that you're not contributing, because remember, the IRS says, hey, we're going to give you a bucket and you can put $58,000 in that bucket. Well, if you fill up that bucket before your employers had a chance to put their money in, your employer just gets off scot-free.
Yeah.
They can't put any more in there. So you want to make sure you leave enough room for whatever your either profit sharing or matching or safe harbor contribution from your employer is.
The other thing is all my small business owners. Look, you're going to get excited about this, but I can tell you, especially if you're in a higher income situation, just because you can doesn't mean you should, because there might be some additional ways you ought to take the tax savings now, load up the $58,000 through the profit sharing, cash balance plans, and then you can even go above that with that cash balance plan.
Yep.
You might need the tax savings currently because remember, you're hopeful, especially if you're in that 37, maybe soon to be 39.6 federal tax rate. You're very well, if you manipulate the 3-bucket strategy, you might be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. And you might need the money savings to save that 37 to 40% taxes that you're currently paying in current year.
The third downside is, and this is just because we've done this enough. We do this with a number of clients. It can be administratively difficult because a lot of 401k plans, a lot of 401k providers, it's a small percentage of folks who can take advantage of this. It is the financial mutants at these companies that get to do this. So usually you can't just do it online and process it electronically. You usually have to make a phone call, and even sometimes you have to send money out of the plan because there's some, pre-tax portion, and then once it's out of the plan, you got to send it back into the plan. There are a lot of moving parts if you want to do this well and make sure that it stays tax-free. So there's some administration involved. Again, this is one of those areas where if you're trying to tackle this strategy, it may not be crazy to have someone come alongside you, partner with you to make sure you're doing it right. Because when done right, it's awesome. But when done wrong, it can leave a lot of headaches.
So, Bo, this is one I'm kind of excited to see because it wasn't done, I don't think, when in pre-show planning yesterday, is that I asked the question of who should do this?
Yep.
And, FTE Daniel was working on a brilliant flow chart.
Yep.
I can't wait to see if he stuck the landing.
So here are the questions you ask if you want to know if you should potentially do the mega backdoor Roth. Question number 1, have you maxed out your 401k, the $19,500 that you're allowed to do in there? If the answer is no, max that out first. Don't start trying to do the mega backdoor thing. Do whether it's Roth or pre-tax, max out your $19,500 first.
If you have not reached $19,500, you shouldn't even be sniffing around.
That's exactly right.
This is for higher income folks. We know that. I'll just go ahead and tell people, if you're not in a higher income situation where you can save at these levels, this probably isn't going to be the strategy for you.
So if you have maxed out your 401k, your next question is, are you allowed to make non-Roth after-tax contributions? Meaning, does your plan allow it? If the answer is no, you can't do this strategy. There's no way around it. You can write HR, you can ask them, you can lobby for it, but if the plan does not allow after-tax contributions, there's nothing you can do. If it does allow after-tax contributions, the next question you would have is, does it allow in-service distributions of conversions? Because remember, without that piece, it's just tax-deferred money, not tax-free money. So you want to make sure that it allows that. If the answer is no, the strategy won't work for it. If your answer is yes, are you under the overall contribution limit? Meaning between you and your employer, are you putting in less than $58,000? Now, I will say there are some employers that are incredibly generous when it comes to profit sharing and when it comes to employer match. And we have seen it before where between the $19,500 and the employer contributions, it fills up the $58,000 bucket. So you want to make sure that you're leaving some room or that you have room to do it. If your answer is yes, then you can do the mega backdoor Roth.
So this is a strategy that's definitely for the sophisticated. That's why we titled this. This is probably, definitely in the more advanced planning strategies. And I think, when I now transition to what should you invest in, I have a little bit different answer on this strategy than I do some of the others because look, for all the others, because I wanted to focus on foundational behavior, foundational savings, I think you can't do much better than index target retirement funds because it's just so simple. It's those two variables. How much can you save? When do you need it? All the other stuff is taken care of for you. But if you're doing a strategy like a mega Roth contribution, you're in a high income situation because you have a big shovel. You're able to save a lot of money. you probably are reaching that threshold. It just happens to you naturally. Once your assets $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, you're starting to become more concerned about tax location. How do I be as tax efficient with how I structure my retirement assets for taxes? The other thing you're thinking about is what assets will I have access to in retirement so I can legally, remember, once again, legally manipulate my taxes in retirement. All these things are going to come into play. So if you're getting sophisticated where you do need to pay attention to tax location because different assets are taxed different ways, you're also worried about how you're going to pull this money out in retirement, you probably want to start thinking about talking to somebody that can help navigate all those heavy decisions. And that's why, look, I can't give you the easy answer like the index target retirement fund. That's the beauty of the abundance cycle. If you do this right, I know no matter how simple you try to make your life, complexity will hunt you down. It is the best. If you're playing hide and seek, I totally screwed that up. If you're playing hide and seek, complexity will find you.
That's
it
right.
is a superb.
That's a
It is pro level hide and seek player level. It's going to come to you, and that's where the abundance cycle will pay off.
I love it. So, Brian, what we've done thus far on the shows, we've talked about everything for accumulators. Really, these are folks building their army of dollar bills, still in the accumulation phase. But maybe you are later on in your life or later on in your career, and
maybe you're
close to retirement. Maybe you're a financial independence, retire early, and you say, man, I wish I would have known these things, but I didn't. Does that mean that tax-free is out for me forever? I don't have any ability to do Roth. The answer is no, because there is a fourth way to build Roth assets, and this is through straight-up taxable Roth conversions, through a Roth conversion strategy where you're taking some portion of your pre-tax dollars and turning them into tax-free Roth dollars.
Look, we have a graduated tax system. The more money you make, the higher your taxes are. But this creates an opportunity for those that, especially if you're retiring early, you might have enough after-tax assets and access to money that's not really generating a lot of taxable income, especially with interest rates as low as they are, and you're not working anymore in a traditional earned income situation, you might be in some really low tax brackets.
That's right.
And if that's the case, if you retired early and you have these low tax brackets, you really might want to look at this as an opportunity. Can I take and run the tables on these low tax brackets and turn these into Roth assets? And especially some of you live in states where there's also incentives or at least no taxability of certain retirement assets as well. These are great planning opportunities that you really need to kind of take advantage of.
Yeah, really. I mean, I think the lower tax brackets, I think for a married filing joint couple, I think the 12% tax bracket runs up to like $80,000 of taxable income or something in that realm. What's amazing is you think about it, if you do think the tax rates are probably going to go up over the remaining part of your life, it's not crazy to capitalize on those low tax brackets. Because remember, at age 72, if you have pre-tax assets, you're going to be required to pull distributions out of those pre-tax monies. Well, if you can convert those pre-tax dollars to tax-free before you get to 72, what you're really doing is even though you're paying taxes today, you're likely going to be saving your future self taxes. And what's beautiful is when it comes to inheriting assets, Roth assets are wonderful for your beneficiaries to inherit, because even though they are subject to required minimum distributions for your beneficiaries over a certain time period, it's still tax-free to them. So not only can those dollars grow tax-free for the remainder of your life, it can also grow tax-free for your beneficiaries, which is really remarkable.
Even with recent tax legislation, it used to be you could do the stretch over their life expectancy. Now you still have 10 years.
That's right.
And then realize, like I have a special needs child. They didn't change the rule. If you have a disabled child or your beneficiary is disabled, you still get the stretch benefit. Yep. That's something that's not talked about a lot. So take advantage of these things. There's definitely a lot of benefits to understanding Roth strategies and low tax rates.
Now, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of very successful folks and a lot of fire folks who say, all right, this is it. I'm in. This is my plan. This is the thing I'm going to do. I want to start converting pre-tax to Roth. Well, there are some things that you need to be aware of because income in retirement matters. And there are certain thresholds where things happen. We just listed a few of them, like Medicare surcharges. You could potentially lose Affordable Care Act subsidies. You could cause the value of your Social Security income to be more highly taxed. A larger portion of that could be taxed. Your capital gains, you might go from a 0% capital gains tax rate up to a 15% capital gains rate. And on the flip side of this is one that's really exciting that we saw this in 2020. A beautiful thing you can do if you have resources is in the middle of the COVID downturn, in the middle of the pandemic, asset prices were depressed at one point, 20 to 30%. If you're someone who's implementing this Roth conversion strategy, and maybe you're doing it every year, maybe you wait till the end of the year, a great opportunity you have is when the market does get beaten up, if you have an asset that's worth this much, and if you're listening on iTunes, you can't see my hand, but if you have an asset that you know is worth $10,000, but the market, just because of whatever, takes a tumble and it goes down to $6,000, one of the things you can do is you can convert that asset from traditional to Roth at $6,000, and then when it recovers, when it bounces back, you get back all that tax-free, all that growth on the tax-free side. So it's a huge opportunity if you are someone with a large portfolio, large assets, to recognize that you can do some of that asset shifting in times of turmoil.
Here's the only thing that as you're sharing all this, but I'll tell you there's one downside or one area of concern. You remember the pandemic where we had the huge drops in markets in 2020 was really kind of that late March period of time. That's when I think it was around March 27th this thing got crushed. The problem is I wanted to do this for a ton of clients. But because we have a lot of clients that we do Roth conversion strategies with, we try to fill up those low tax brackets. But it's those unintended consequences between Medicare surcharges, affordable care subsidies, because that's especially affordable care subsidies. If you have anybody on that who's retired early, because that's one of the reasons everybody thinks it's great to build financial independence is because, man, I'll retire in my 50s.
Yeah.
And you quickly find out health insurance is a big deal.
It's a cost.
So then, with the Affordable Care Act, there are tax subsidies, but they're cliffs, meaning that if you go $1 over a certain level of income, all of it now becomes you don't get the subsidies anymore. Right. So you need to be very aware of where those subsidy thresholds are. And I just didn't feel comfortable on some of these clients. I knew I wanted to do Roth conversions, but we could only do it at such a small scale because we knew there was so much of 2020 left and so much uncertainty with their income.
That's right.
That we just couldn't pull the trigger on it. And that's the only thing. So once again, we're back to a situation. It's a great opportunity, but there are levels of complexity and unintended consequences that you might not be thinking about. And this is something so big, you don't want to screw it up.
Exactly
so that's
right.
once again, and look, you guys are probably starting to catch on. This is what I love about our job. I can give you all the free advice in the world. You go, man, why are these guys giving it away? How can they continue to drop big time knowledge and it's completely free? It's because I know no matter how much I give away, Mr. or Mrs. Complexity is going to sneak up behind you, even though you're hiding from it as much as possible, keeping your life as simple as possible. Your life will get complex. You will also become the CEO of a very successful financial empire. And you're going to start second guessing yourself. What do I not know? What do I need to do? I heard several things on the show. I heard mega Roth. I heard conversion strategies. I heard the bucket system. I heard about tax location. How does all that work? Then how am I going to get my money out of, I'm great at saving. I've always been good. I've been tight. I'm good at saving. But how does that turn into retirement money? That's when, fortunately, the abundance cycle bears fruit for us. We come and give you all this free advice. You learn, apply, grow, reach the level of success, and then hopefully, our hope is, you're going to remember who planted the seeds, who gave you the knowledge to build all this, and you're going to come work with us.
If you haven't had a chance to go check out our websites, go to moneyguy.com. We have a resource page on the Money Guy website where you can go download our financial order of operations deliverable. You can look at how powerful are your dollars. We have all these free resources available for you to help you take your finances to the next level. And if you are curious about the abundance cycle, you want to know what it is that we do for a day job, you want to know who it is we hang out with on a daily basis, go out to our website, aboundwealth.com. Check out the bio. bios, check out the folks, and we can't wait to give you a tour when you come visit us in Franklin, Tennessee.
Guys, I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. Keep focusing on tax-free growth, saving for the future. Guys, there is so much opportunity out there. We can't wait to be part of your success. Talk to you soon. Money Guy Team, out.